again, it is I, Derek from Tomcat Gas Training, and welcome to this video on do we or don't we on a service of a condensing boiler. Now, before we get into this video, please could you take some time to subscribe to the channel because it helps, and don't forget to hit that notification bell because you want YouTube to tell you we're uploading videos on Mondays and Wednesdays. Anyway, let's stop waffling as usual and let's get on with it and find out what we should do and what we shouldn't do when we're carrying out a service on a condensing boiler. Now, the first definitely do when you're carrying out a service on a boiler is you need the manufacturer's instructions. Now, what you can do about the manufacturer's instructions, you could ask the customer before you turn up on site, do you have the manufacturer's instructions? And if they always come back to you like they say to us, why don't you know what you're doing? Well, you can say, well, there's a service record in the back of the book which I need to fill in, and there's also some incredibly important readings in this book which are different for different types and makes of boilers, and I can't remember every one of them. Anyway, manufacturer's instructions is key when you're servicing a condensing boiler or any gas appliance, because you will require them, not just for installing them, for servicing too. Also, there are some great apps around there if you cannot get hold of the manufacturer's instructions, and you can download them, you can print them, or you can just keep them on your phone as a PDF. So check which make and model you're servicing before you actually go on site. Now, as well as the manufacturer's instructions, we will also need to carry out this service to regulation 26.9 of the Gas Safety Installation and Use Regulations 1998, which was amended in 2018. It says in Regulations 26 paragraph 9 the checks we need to do. So as we're going through this video, you'll find out exactly what these checks are for 26.9. But they're behind me. Now, this is the boiler we're going to be servicing. It's just a logic, and I've got the manufacturer's instructions here to help me, so we're going to be going through that. Now then, first thing we need to do before we actually touch this appliance is carry out our safe to touch test. I get a lot of stick for these poor little things on social media. You can either use it or not use it, it's entirely up to you, but we must follow the correct procedure for testing them. So we must prove that they're okay, then use them, then prove them again before we touch the appliance. Now, some of the boiler casings are plastic as well, so just watch out for that. This one isn't, it's metal. So the first thing I need to do is go over to the plug socket here, prove it, then I can use it, then I can prove it again, and then I know it's safe to touch it. Do we need to do it? I'd certainly advise you to do the safe to touch test now, just to be safe. So I'm going to test the boiler and test the pipework. So I know it's safe now, just need to go and prove it to make sure it's still working. So now we know it's safe to touch. So that's the safe to touch test. Now, before I take the cover off, I'm going to do a visual inspection of this appliance, and I'm going to check and see if I can see any faults. You spotted any? So straight away, I can see from my visual inspection, I've not even taken the cover off yet, I can see somebody's put some tape over the air inlet side for flue integrity. Now, according to IGEM G11 edition 2 now, we've got a little section there that says if our test point is missing from the air inlet, then it's at risk, unless you've got more than 10 parts per million of CO coming into the room. And if you've got the test nipple missing off here, where you do your flue gas analysing, then that would make it ID, even if you've got less than 10 parts per million CO coming in. So that's the first fault we've got. Also, while we're here, we might as well see if it's sealed. Oh, no, it's not sealed neither. So the flue's not sealed to the wall. It's just got this bit of a rubber collar around there, which isn't even manufactured by Ideal. So that'll need to be sealed on the service as well while we found it, and this will need either a new turret or a new rubber bung to go into it. It's before we've even taken the casing off. Also, when I look down here, somebody has put a push fit stop end on the blow off. So, how are we going to categorise that? Well, if there's a high limit stat, but no blow off, or the blow off is disconnected or whatever, then it's at risk. But would you at risk that? Do you disagree? Put it in the comments down below if you disagree with me. So on our visual inspection, I've also seen that it's connected to the electrical supply via a plug top. So can a boiler be on a plug top? Yes, they can, but it must be on an unswitched socket. But this is a switch socket. So that would make it, for us, because we're not electricians, not to current standards, and you would note that down on your service record. Because yes, you will need to fill a service record. So the major thing we need to do is a visual inspection before we've even taken the cover off. And these are the faults we found just by visually looking at it. Now let's take the plug out and check the fuse size while we're here. And it's got a 3 amp fuse in there. So at least that's good. If I had a 13 amp in, we'll be changing it for a 3 amp. Same for a fuse spur as well. If you take out the fuse on the fuse spur and it's a 13 amp, make sure you replace it with 3 amp, because the wrong size fuse could actually blow the board before it blows the fuse. Just to finish off with this actual visual inspection before we carry on doing anything else actually to the boiler, has it got the right controls? So if it's a newly installed boiler, does it actually have controls for Boiler Plus? Because this is a combi. Remember, system boilers and heat only boilers don't need Boiler Plus controls, they need their own set of controls. This one's just got a time clock. There's no room stack connected to it. So if there's no room stack connected to it, then that means it's not efficient enough and the customer could be wasting gas. So advise the customer that they should have, under the building controls, part L of the building controls, they should have a room stack fitted. But if they don't want it fitting, you've still got to note that down and tell them that they should have it fitted. Can't force them, can't pin them down, but you need to note it and tell them that they do require it. But if it's a brand new installed one and there isn't Boiler Plus controls, then you want to be finding out why they haven't fitted them. So, shall we see if it works then? Now we've finished all our visual inspections now. We need to check and make sure it works before we go any further, because what I found is a lot of people want you to come and service the boiler because you'll do that at a set fee, and when you turn up it don't work. And I bet most of you out there have heard it was working before you touched it. So before you actually start taking the cover off and doing anything, let's make sure it works. We need to turn it on first. Well, there's a good start. Turn the power on and it's going through its pre-purge. Tap's just here for the hot water. Let's put the hot water on. It's fired up. Don't worry about the funny noise when it fired up. The gas has been off. We have to turn the gas off there every day. But there you go. It fired up on hot water. let's try central heating. Just turn the time clock on. So there you go, it works on heating and hot water. That's a good start. Now, do we or don't we need to carry out a tightness test on a service? Well, according to regulation 26.9, we don't need to do a tightness test. And according to a lot of the boiler manufacturers, they don't tell us we need to do a tightness test on a service. But do we need to do visual inspections of the gas meter? Well, again, because of the changes in IGM G11, we should be visually inspecting the meter to see if they're stealing gas. And to make sure things like the ECV doesn't fall to on. And that we've got stickers on the Anaconda that the meter bracket has got seals, tamper seals, and the shear bolts have been sheared. The regulator is sealed. We've got earth bonding within 600, and again, the earth bonding, let's not go there today. Gas meter itself, does it show signs of damage or corrosion? Does it have a meter bracket? Well, if you're not doing a tightness test, then you're probably not going to do a visual inspection of the meter, and you're probably not going to do a gas rate. We'll get to gas rating later. So, do we have to do a tightness test on a service? According to the regulations, no we don't. But the way I train it is, why not? You're checking the integrity of the gas. So, you're doing a service for the customer and you're telling them if they've got a gas leak or not. But, according to the regulations, no we don't. Now, I always check the safety devices are working first before I take the cover off. Now you could do the safety devices, check the safety devices as you're going along. Now we've seen that the blow off is obviously capped off, and you would be telling the customer who needs to go through and give them a quote for putting it through. But I always check the safety devices first to make sure they are working before I turn it off. So, the appliance is still on from when we've just tested that it's working. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to turn the tap on. So it's fired up. While it's running, I'm going to turn the gas supply off underneath here. And it's locked out. So the burner light's gone out. So now what we're waiting for now is for the actual appliance to put a fault up for us. Try to fire up again. It's reading D on the front, which is demand for hot water. It's now put an F up, saying F2. Now it's gone D. So it's trying to fire up again. It's now put an F2. F2 fault. So it's trying to fire up again, so it's gone demand again. Now again saying F2, and now it's trying to fire up again, so it's gone back to F2, and believe it or not, it's trying to fire up again. It's now saying L2, so it's coming up with an L2 fault, and it's not trying to light now. We're saying L2, there's no red light indication or anything like that. It's just literally saying L2 on the front screen. So, I'm going to turn the tap off again. I'm going to reinstate the gas supply. I'm going to press the reset button. And let's try again. Go up with demand, the blue lights come on, and we now know the safety device is working if the gas supply was interrupted. Now, I need to isolate the supply now so I can take the cover off. Now, if you are going to go into the PCB, if you're doing a breakdown on this, or my advice, if the plug socket is well away from where the boiler is, it's not well away, but it's a little bit away, you can retain the fuse because it's all about your safety. You don't want anybody plug it back in and turning it back on. In this situation where I'm not going into the PCB, we're doing a service and everything else is low voltage we're going to be touching, and we're going to be turning the appliance off. So if we turn the appliance off, I can now take the plug out of the plug socket and there'll be no power going to this boiler. So we're now safe to take the front cover off. Now we've taken the front cover off, we can do a full visual inspection inside this appliance to make sure we've got no water leaks. Now, we've done all the visual checks inside to make sure we've got no leaks, and there are no leaks whatsoever in here. And now when it comes to the full servicing procedure, we need to look in the manufacturer's instructions to follow those to see exactly what the boiler manufacturer wants us to do. They're not all the same. Some boiler manufacturers say completely strip and clean the boiler every year. And some of them are quite easy to do with that. Some boiler manufacturers say 4 or 5 years they need to be stripped and cleaned, and the seals need to be changed. But any seals you found broken, no matter whether they say it's alright or it's not, you need to replace them. So always carry the seal kits again for the boilers. You're going to strip and clean because you're offering your customer a service. So do we strip and clean them? Well, yes, we strip and clean them according to the manufacturer's instructions. So again, you need to speak to the customer and say, how old is your boiler? How many times have you had it serviced? If the customer says it's been in 5 years and they've never had anybody look at it, then you're going to be needing to take a seal kit with you because you're going to be completely stripping and cleaning it. There are obvious things you need to do, like clean out the condensate trap. That's a given that you'll need to do that whether you're stripping or cleaning it. Now, do we need to check the expansion vessel? Now again, me personally, about checking the expansion vessel, I would only check the expansion vessel on a service if I thought there was some kind of fault. That's just my preference. Some guys I know check them every time. And again, is it mandatory to check the expansion vessel? Some of the manufacturers don't tell you to check the expansion vessel on a service. One of the things you could do is, so this is a water tide, that's the air side. You could just see if there's a difference in sound like there is here. And obviously when the appliance is running, if the pressure gauge goes straight away up, the pressure gauge is down here on this one. Well, should be. Anyway, if the pressure gauge starts climbing really quickly, then it could either be the incorrect pressure or the expansion vessels needs recharging or replacing. So you could do that or not do that. Put in the comments down, guys, if you think on every service we should be checking the expansion vessel and we should be stripping and cleaning them. Some manufacturers say we don't need to. So let's start now looking at the checks we do need to do to comply with Regulation 26.9. Now then, these tests according to Regulation 26 paragraph 9 of the Gas Safety Installation and Use Regulations. So what tests do we need to do? Now then, standing pressure and working pressure at the meter. Now, if you're not doing visuals at the meter, you're not doing tightness tests at the meter, are you going to be doing standing pressure and working pressure at the meter? No, you're not. But 26.9 does say we have to test the heat input and or the inlet pressure at the appliance, or the operating pressure at the appliance. Now, if you're not doing these tightness tests, you're not going to do standing pressure, working pressure. You're possibly not going to do gas rating neither, are you? You're just going to rely on your flue gas analyzer readings and to see what your pressure is at your appliance. You call that a service? Anyway, if you disagree with me, then put down in the comments, but Regulation 26.9 does say we do need to or should be checking the heat input and or inlet pressures. Now then, we're up to flue gas analysing, because you will have to do a flue gas analysing on a service, whether it's condensing or non-condensing boilers now. Now, understanding your results from your flue gas analyzer is incredibly important, and I've done loads of videos on flue gas analysing, so I will leave a link in the description below so you can have a look at those if you wish to. Now then, again, putting your probe into your actual sample point, you need about 150 in this type of flue, because if you put it in too far, you will suck up all that moist air, which you don't really want. Flue integrity testing. Now, flue integrity testing, is it required on a service? No, it's not. According to GasSafe it isn't anyway. And according to regulation 26.9, it does say check the integrity of the flue system. So I would be doing a flue integrity test on a service, definitely. Also, we've still got to check the full length and where it terminates and all that kind of stuff, because you've got to go and have a look outside, haven't you? Because you don't know whether it's fluid into a conservatory or not, or it's in over a boundary. Again, fluid locations for boiler flues, I've done loads of videos for them, so have a look at the channel. So it's not just racking up and doing your flue gas analyzer readings, it's understanding your flue gas analyzer readings as well. But the manufacturers will give you the readings what they should be. This isn't that good, it just says a reading of less than 0.004 for the ratio. It doesn't tell you what your CO is, doesn't tell you what your CO2 should be. So that's flue gas analysing. It's something we definitely have to do on a service. Now, another test we have to do on the service is the sweep test. Some of you might not have even heard of a sweep test. But a sweep test is, even in the analyzer, we've got a separate setting for sweep test, because we have to check and make sure that the seals on the boiler, whether they're inside or outside, are working. So we must check around the outside of the casing, or around the outside of the combustion chamber, or where the manufacturer tells you, to see whether we've got more than 10 parts per million CO coming into the room. Just remember, before carrying out your sweep test, make sure your test points are back on, because your sweep test will tell you if you forgot to put them on, hopefully. So yes, that should be done on a service. It's checking the integrity of it. Also in the regulation 26.9, it says things like check ventilation requirements. This doesn't need ventilation requirements. It says things like check whether the room's big enough. Well, this can go anywhere now, really, can't it? Except in your bath. You don't want to put it in your bath. Anyway, flue gas analyzer readings, read the manufacturer's instructions, but the main thing is to understand what readings you should be getting. So are there any other checks we need to do now? Well, yeah. If they have a filter on the boiler, which they should have now for the new ones, then do we need to clean that filter? Well, I would. If you're offering a service, then you should be cleaning the filter. Also now, well, it's not complete regulation yet, but are we checking the quality of the water system in the central heating? Is there enough inhibitor in there? Again, there's loads of different test kits, and again, I've done loads of different videos now on testing the quality of water out there, but that will become mandatory pretty soon, I would think. So yes, there are loads of other tests we could do. Are we walking around the system to see whether they've got any leaks or not? Also, make sure all the radiators are working and that it's the correct pressure in the system. And if the radiators do need bleeding, just bleed the radiators and then re-top up the system to the correct pressure. And the last thing is, are there any other appliances we need to check on a service? Well, actually, yes. It says in iGEM G11, Appendix 5, in addition to, if we're doing a service on a boiler and we encounter other appliances, there are checks we need to do for them as well. So it's not just racking up and checking the one appliance, you will also have to check other appliances you've encountered. I've done this in other videos, but let's just have a quick recap. So this is Appendix 5, your visual risk assessment of gas appliances in iGEM G11 edition 2. It's also in the first edition, but it has been upgraded round here. So it's basically the visual risk assessment of appliances that, and it says in there, you've encountered. So it's actually set up into 3 sections, and it all depends on whether you've done a tightness test or not, or whether you've allowed air into the system or not. But this is us. This is the first one. So an appliance is encountered whilst working on another appliance, e.g. while servicing a central heating boiler, a gas cooker is installed in the same room. A visual assessment of the gas cooker would be necessary. So we would need to check this cooker if it's in the same room. And this table here tells us what checks we need to do. So again, we're in this section here, an appliance is encountered whilst working on another appliance. So we'll need to check its location. So is it installed in the right room? Is it the right size room? Fluing, it's actually a flueless appliance, so not a lot to check there. Ventilation, now we'll need to make sure on the room size, whether the room's big enough and whether there's an openable window. Obviously the boiler doesn't need any ventilation. We need to see if there's any signs of distress on any combustible materials around it, and we need to check and make sure it's stable and secure. But we don't need to check the flame picture. Also, when we look at here, it says generally a visual risk assessment is for visual apparent defects only and does not require moving an appliance or any building infrastructure unless the engineer has concerns. And then it does say for further investigation purposes, an engineer will need to hold the relevant qualifications or competency. So you would have to have cookers to be able to check it properly. Otherwise, you'd just be dealing with the unsafe situation you see. So that's a quick look at the appliances you've encountered on a service. So yes, we will be checking other appliances. Now let's just finish off with Derek's top tips on servicing, which are on the board here. So let's start at number 1 and let's have a look at what I think are the things you should be doing on a full service of a condensing boiler. Let's start number 1 then, shall we? Number 1, always make sure you have the manufacturer's instructions to hand before you start any work. Number 2, carry out a visual inspection of the appliance and make sure you carry out the safe to touch test before you touch the appliance, any pipework or even the gas meter. Number 3, bit controversial, but carry out a tightness test and do a visual assessment of the gas meter and its associated pipework. Number 4, always check that the boiler is working on central heating and hot water before you actually touch the appliance, because you don't want to be falling into the trap. It was working before you touched it. Number 5, check all the safety devices on the appliance, making sure they work to the manufacturer's instructions. Number 6, check to see if the appliance requires ventilation. Now, it's not an open fluid appliance, this one. All modern condensing boilers now don't require ventilation, even if they're installed in a cupboard or a compartment. Number 7, isolate the electrical supply and check the fuse to make sure it is only a 3 amp fuse, not a 13 amp fuse. And the most important one, number 8, always service the appliance to the manufacturer's instructions. Number 9, gas rate the boiler on central heating and hot water, because you will need to check its heat input. And number 10, check the operation or the working pressure or the inlet pressure of the appliance at the appropriate test point on maximum rate. Number 11, carry out the combustion performance tests on the appliance on full rate and minimum rate. Number 12, check the flue integrity of the flue and the boiler seals around it, carrying out a sweep test. Number 13, clean the magnetic filter and check the water quality to see if you need to add any more inhibitor or not. Number 14. Check any other appliances you have encountered while carrying out the service according to Appendix 5 of iGEM G11 Edition 2. And finally, fill in the service record in the back of the benchmark book, fill in your own paperwork and hand it back to the customer. Then explain to the customer if there's any faults you've found and how you will have to deal with them according to iGEM G11, and tell them that their next service will be due in 12 months' time. And that is the end of this video on servicing a condensing boiler. So if you've liked this video, why don't you give me that thumbs up or leave a constructive comment down below. If you've not subscribed to my channel, then please subscribe because it helps. And don't forget to hit that notification bell because you do want YouTube to tell you that we upload videos on Mondays and Wednesdays. All I've got left to say is, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one, guys. Cheers.